1.0 supposedly came out with hundreds of bug fixes, and today I'm going to show you a couple that I keep my eye on from time to time to see if they are fixed, as well as some other things that I think that BSG should prioritize in the next set of technical updates. But before that, let's start with some of the longer standing and more obvious ones with the glasses bug. This is an ancient issue where certain glasses showed up absolutely glowing in foggy situations because the glass texture was rendered over the top of the fog effect. This was worst at distance, and previously there were 6 specific glasses that had this problem, from the crossbows to the Ray-Bench Hipster and Aviators, the round frames, the Dunducks and the Oakley SI gas cans. In the past, you'd see this a lot with newer players. It's basically like a new player tax, not knowing that these glasses made you stand out at distance, especially because that's usually where the fog effect renders the most. And as with lots of bugs, it also caused many accusations for various players because people could see you at unrealistic distances. I'd not noticed any of these situations in 1.0, but whether that was just because people weren't wearing these glasses, because people kind of know about it now, enough people have reported on it, myself and a few other creators included, so I went to go and check them all out. Fortunately, these days you can set the weather in co-op offline raids, which you can't do solo, and I took in every single pair of glasses, including all the ones from Arena, except the Twitch Rivals ones, because you just simply can't buy these on the flea market. As it turns out, BSG have fixed the glasses bug, so none of them glow in the fog anymore, which basically means that you can use whichever pairs you like. I did want to go and check all of them to make sure that they hadn't reintroduced the issue somewhere else, but every single set of glasses that I wore looked completely fine on a foggy Ground Zero raid. I actually also hadn't noticed before that all of the glasses on Ref are now 1 GP coin, so if you like to wear these for the look of them, then you can get them for almost next to nothing. So next up, let's talk about bullet crack. I do test this one periodically, usually in audio videos, but given it's the subject of this video, let's have a look again. I have noticed less bullet crack bug this wipe, and by that specifically, I mean hearing a bullet crack when you really shouldn't, so you're inside a building or when you're outside but nobody's actually shooting at you. Last time I looked at this was part of my audio video for 1.0, and it did seem that when somebody was shooting away from you, that bullet crack bug was fixed. In the past, if you were along the line of the shooter, regardless of whether you were in front or behind, the bullet crack played for you regardless of where you were positioned. BSG had already fixed the one from behind, so it was only the one from the front that was an issue. This time, when I tested it on Ground Zero, around a few different structures and buildings, there's some places where I couldn't get it to happen and some places where I could, so it's not entirely gone away. This building in the center, I actually couldn't get it to trigger at all, regardless of which gun I used or which position my PMC was in. But moving over to the Terror Group building, so long as I was getting mostly outdoor audio, I could get it to trigger most of the time. But one addition that I would mention on this is once my player was inside properly and getting muffled audio from outside gunshots, I didn't seem to get the bullet crack bug at all. I don't really know what causes the difference between being able to hear it in some situations and not being able to hear it in others. So perhaps it's something to do with being near a window and hearing outside audio whilst you're inside. I'm not entirely sure. So overall, no, it's not entirely fixed, but it is significantly better than it used to be. The practical ramifications is that you probably should pay a little bit more attention when getting the bullet crack sound, as it is more likely to be at you these days than just an error, although not certain. By the way, one thing that I would like to point out as a complete aside is that while doing this testing, I do get to hear what walking around with one PMC sounds like with another PMC, and I do hear interesting stuff. So the thing that I noticed while I was doing this was just how quiet vaulting is. This is something to bear in mind when you're flanking people and choosing whether to jump or vault. People may actually not hear you vault at all, and you can appear in places that might surprise people. Just a random tidbit given it came up in my testing. The third one I want to talk about here is a movement thing, and it's not really a bug per se, but it's something that's annoyed me for a while, and this is the lack of control of your character while you slide. In the past, if you sprint and then let go of the key without pressing anything else, your character used to do a slide and there'd be a delay before your PMC could bring their gun up so that you could actually shoot it. BSG did get rid of this, but in Arena, and so we got a chance to test out what it was like without having it there, and I have to say it was pretty nice. Since then, I have have argued that they should probably just get rid of this in the base game too, as it's simply a noob trap where newer players accidentally lose control of their character because they don't press the specific set of keys required to make your character come to a nice stop rather than sliding. I never thought this was particularly immersive to lose control of your character without really knowing why, and BSG have actually removed it in the base game. I've not seen anybody else talking about this, but you still get the sound that plays, and it is really loud by the way, so you probably still want to avoid sliding if you can help it, but now you don't get locked into the slide animation by accident, and this is a huge improvement. In a similar vein to Arena, you can also ADS out of sprint directly, so you can bring up your gun by pressing right click whilst you're sprinting without having to cancel the sprint first. This has, however, increased the time to ADS out of sprint if you do it the old way, causing some faster paced players to moan a bit, as you can't cancel the sprint and then insta ADS anymore like you used to in the past. Some of you may think this is good, and some of you might think it's bad. It just kind of depends on your viewpoint. Alright, given we're talking about movement, I wanted to talk about something tangentially related to vaulting, because of, again, something that I'd noticed and have been thinking about for a little bit but never got around to testing it, which is that if you are sprinting and you vault over a barricade, you actually don't lose any leg stamina as you are vaulting over this object, but you do gain ground. If you think about it, this theoretically means that if you're vaulting, you can actually get further on one stamina bar than you can if you don't. I went to check how much this improved your distance by, and it isn't a lot, but if there are things around that are easily vaultable, you may well do it just to get a bit of extra distance as you're moving along. One downside to this is, although you do go further on one sprint bar, you actually don't get to where you want to go as fast as you would have just running on its own, so it is a little bit of a trade-off. I often try to vault over little boxes and railings and things like that as I'm moving around just to extend out my sprint bar a little bit further, and whether it makes a big difference, who really knows, but it's just one thing to add to your toolbox. So with that, let's move on to some things that I still think need tweaking or don't really work, and first and foremost is desync. This is unfortunately still a problem in 2026, but it's inconsistent, which makes it really hard to test. This is partly because sometimes it's to do with player pings or the server specifically, and this can make the situation worse, but I've been on both ends of desync in this particular wipe, and in the worst cases, it really is enormous the amount of desynchronization that can be in this game. If you have a look at this first clip, I'm fighting a trio in Check 15 on streets, and as I run out of this particular room because I'm forced out, a guy comes above me, I basically get a free kill on the dude in the corridor. You can see that I'm shooting at him and only right near the end does he ADS his weapon. Even if we're really generous here, this is the position at which he can see us for the first time, excluding the fact that he can see our arm or something. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 48, 49, 50, and you can see the guy ADS is here, and then on 51, 52, 58, 59, and 60, this is where he dies. So if we do a quick calculation, he only really responds at 50 frames, and this recording is done in 60 FPS, because that's what all my recordings are done in. So if we divide that by 60, that tells us how many milliseconds it is before the guy responds, which is 833. Now, yes, this could be down slightly to the guy himself, maybe really slow to respond, but it does look weird that he just didn't move at all in this particular situation. Let's move on to the next one, where it's a little bit more obvious, because it happened to me rather than happening to somebody else, so we don't really know about this guy's reaction time. So in this clip, I meet a duo on the bridge of customs, and I completely unload at his friend, and unfortunately don't manage to kill him at all. Slightly too far away, my spray control isn't very good, but never mind. And I get a little bit stuck behind this bush and have to duke it out with this guy from behind the tree. Now, I definitely shouldn't have repeated, and it turned out this guy was Prestige 4, so he killed me pretty easily. But again, if you slow down the clip and give the most generous interpretation of how many frames it was, I peek out here when I really shouldn't, so we'll just skip this forwards again. I fire my bullets and don't kill him, and the moment that I disappear, he shouldn't be able to see me after this point here. So we can count the frames, the number of frames when I die. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and there you go, you see my head is blacked up here. And there were no bullet holes in the tree or anything, so he definitely shot us around the tree. Now 21 frames, if we do the same maths as we did before, this takes us to 350 milliseconds, which is another absolutely insane amount of desync on a totally different map in a different situation. I play EU Auto, my ping is really, really low at all times, so who knows what's going on, but I think BSG really need to take a second look at the networking. The next one is performance on customs in general. There are a few places on customs that have really, really bad FPS, but I would say that overall the map doesn't perform that well. Customs used to be one of the best performing maps in the game, and now it typically dips down to 70, 60, something like that on my machine, and And I don't have a top of the line rig. I've got a 5800 X3D with a 4070 Ti Super, but it's certainly solid and should not struggle with customs in this day and age like it does at the moment. Now, I've talked about this quite a few times over on Twitter. I haven't spoken about it that much on YouTube outside of shorts, but there is one building in particular, which is the one that Sniper Scav stands on, which absolutely destroys my computer and lots of other people's as well. Weirdly, it doesn't seem to be a universal thing because some people seem to have worse performance looking elsewhere on the map, but there's a whole cohort of people, including me, that this building completely destroys their rig, and often I can get down into the 50s, if not even the 40s sometimes, with this building in sight. It's worse if I'm looking at the whole building in general, so I think it's something to do with these transparent textures, but whatever it is, BSG really need to take a look at it because Customs performs horribly. It's actually the second worst performing map for me now, along with Streets, which is really sad. Nothing I do seems to make it any better. Even if I put the game down into the tiniest resolution possible, I have nothing else running, it still chugs along about 50 FPS looking at this building. The worst part about it, it's right in the middle of the map, so it makes it very difficult to avoid. The best way that I play Customs is go to that building and fight radially away from it so I don't have to look at it, which is just something you don't need to be thinking about playing this game. Another thing that I think BSG should improve, and I hear about this all the time on my live stream and in my YouTube comments, is improving the functionality around flare extracts. This is something that people just simply don't trust because they've got people killed over and over again. And whether they make it a little bit more lenient or they do something sensible like having a counter flare that goes off to show you that you did it right, something like that, any improvement to the flare extract system would be most welcome, simply because it's so annoying when you try to use it. Presumably it's at the end of the raid and you want to get out either with a quest item or a load of loot, and when the sniper shoots you anyway, even though you basically did everything right, it just doesn't make any sense. The bounding box for the flare extract is way too small and it's way too fiddly to get into the right position. One of the most notorious ones is the one on Customs, because for this one you have to be up on the top of the rails and you have to fire it correctly to be able to get it to work. Something that I found out during testing when I was experimenting with it earlier is that even if you fire it off properly and then you go down the hill, you still get shot by the sniper down at the edge, despite the fact that you've set the flare off and can actually extract out of the extract. These work in such an absurd way. There needs to be some kind of signifier to tell you that you did it right, maybe smoke at the end of the extract, or I don't know, literally anything. Now, I don't know whether you guys check on Tarkov.community from time to time. I know I do, not as often as I probably should. And over there are some good suggestions that people have put up for BSG to add into the game. Some of them being things like loading ammo outside of the inventory, which BSG have said they're actually working on. But the one that I really think BSG should put in is this incremental hideout hand-in. This has been pending for so long and would be such a nice thing to be able to add things to our hideout modules, a bit like we hand in items for our quests, so we don't need to keep stuff for ages just in storage. This is another thing that would help standard account players, which I'm always pushing for because those guys need the most help. And I really thought this was going to come with the hardcore wipe, never mind Tarkov 1.0. So at this point, it definitely should be on the priority list. The final one that I find really annoying is around the search. This is a minor gripe, but to be honest with you, it's something that should be adjusted. Now, the search functionality, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely amazing. It's changed the way the inventory management works in this game. This combined with having these little drop downs and stuff, like the game is way easier to gear up than it ever has been. But the problem that I have with search is the first one is very simple. The fact that keyboard focus isn't in the bar. You have to click into the bar before you can type anything, which really prevents you from having a streamlined setup when you're moving around the inventory. And the other one is that quite often, if you're pressing it a couple of times and you go back and you go in, you can get it locked in this specific way where you can't use any of the tabs, which is really annoying, and you have to either type something or close it and reopen it to get it to fix. I wish it didn't do this because it seems to happen to me all the time. So combining that with having keyboard focus naturally as soon as you click into the search bar, this would really help a lot with searching for things or figuring out where items are in your inventory. So while I do think BSG have done a pretty good job of tidying things up for 1.0 and many systems are improved, there's still a lot of stuff that we've got pending, things like the zeroing system that we haven't seen any improvements to for a very long time. I am hoping over the next year or two that we do get these improvements, especially on those systems that we've been waiting for many years. But given what Nikita was talking about in the last Tarkov TV, I feel like the future is bright for Escape from Tarkov in 1.0 and beyond. So as always, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as usual, have fun in your raids.